Today, we'll be speaking about how Fidelity advocates for plan sponsors on legislative issues. I'm Trey Hearn with Fidelity Investments, and with me today is Alice Joe with Fidelity's Public Policy and Government Relations team.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, in the past few years, we've seen the enactment of impactful retirement legislating, including Secure Act, CARES Act, and Secure 2.0. The details of the legislative process can be complex and difficult to wrap our heads around, and Fidelity is often a voice for plan sponsors. Do we advocate for them throughout the legislative process, Alice?
Well, first, we need to understand the nature of the legislation. There's legislation responding to a crisis, which is what happened during the pandemic when the CARES Act was passed to provide immediate relief to employers and employees during a really challenging time. This type of legislation tends to move very quickly. Then there's also comprehensive reform legislation, which often takes longer to pull together, but can be bipartisan and arises from ideas for improvement. So legislation such as the Secure Act and Secure 2.0. And then there's partisan legislation, which often happens as a result of Washington's power dynamic and the opportunity for a party in power to push through partisan policies.
That's very interesting. And where does Fidelity come into that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, at Fidelity, we understand the need to advocate for plan sponsors and participants at all levels of government and throughout the legislative process. Sometimes this engagement starts before bills are even introduced. We engage with members of Congress and their staff on ideas that can benefit the industry. And just as there are a lot of ways that a bill can move through the process, there are also a lot of ways that we engage with Congress to share our industry experience as a leading retirement provider. Sometimes we share our recommendations for policy that benefits our plan sponsors and participants. For example, during the Secure 2.0 legislative process, we advocated for various provisions such as the student debt retirement provision. And at times, we'll advocate against ideas that are either problematic or burdensome for plan sponsors or participants. And today, we remain engaged on the next round of retirement reforms.
I love that. So once these ideas are put down on paper as bills, how do we help get the most beneficial outcome?
Great question. We seek to be involved throughout the process to ensure good policymaking on behalf of our plan sponsors and participants. That may include meeting with Congress and arming them with data, testifying at congressional hearings. Sometimes we'll share our technical expertise and tell them stories as to why legislation should be enacted.
That is so helpful. So ultimately, Fidelity works closely with policymakers to develop and pass laws that help plan sponsors and participants build secure retirements and the future they choose. That's a very valuable insight into how Fidelity is advocating for plan sponsors throughout the legislative and regulatory process. Thank you so much, Alice.
Thanks, Trey, and great to join you today.